Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Todd Allbaugh Show. We're starting in about 30 seconds here. A little bit of news to go over. We'll get there.
Gonna be fun.
That's for sure.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with our outstanding producer, Mr. Aaron Zommers, on the board. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 12 noon on Tuesday, August 6, 2024. It is a great day to be a Wisconsinite. And we'll throw this one in. It's a great day to be a Minnesotan as well, as it turns out. And welcome in, everybody. We are so happy to have you along. Mr. Zommers, as they say in the NFL draft, the pick is in. The pick is in. And Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States, in her bid to become the President of the United States, has gone to our neighbor to the west, to Minnesota, and picked Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, to be her vice presidential candidate. CNN, the first to break it as far as main media today on the news, that everybody else kind of followed suit. But there is, Paul Harvey was fond of saying, there is more. There's the rest of the story. And we're going to start out by going across the Mississippi River. Let's bring in a little, one of my favorite Minnesotans, Garrison Keillor. Let's bring a little Prairie Home Companion into the mix, Mr. Zommers. Here we go. Great song. Here we go.
One more spring in Minnesota to call upon Lake Wobegon. Old town, I smell the coffee. If I could see you once again.
One of the great Americans, great Minnesotans of all time, Garrison Keillor, his long-running program, A Prairie Home Companion. Saw him up in Eau Claire with my sister and brother-in-law at the Pablo Center this winter. Great concert by Garrison Keillor. And here's the thing I've learned about Minnesotans is I've known a few, and they're fantastic people. And the thing about true Minnesotans is they always are paying attention. And so we welcome into the program now, and we're very, very grateful. In his first interview since going viral late last night into this morning, we welcome Dan Green, who calls himself a communicator, Minneapolis hype man. Now, this guy, Mr. Zommers, was on Twitter last night and really broke this story. Dan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for choosing us as your first interview.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's absolutely a pleasure. So tell us, before we get into this story, and it is a fantastic story, tell folks a little bit about yourself. Did you grow up in Minnesota? Are you a native Minnesotan? And kind of your background a little bit.
Yeah, so I grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, so a couple hours north of Minneapolis. And then I came on down to Minneapolis when I was 18 and for college, and I never left. And since then, I've worked for various different nonprofits and also in politics, working in the communication space. And so doing social media, sending out emails, all that stuff. I've done that for a few different nonprofits in the city. And so that's kind of my general background.
And we were just up in Duluth not too long ago. President Biden was up there announcing $1 billion for the Blatnick Bridge connecting Duluth to Superior. So it's a beautiful part of America, beautiful part of Minnesota up there in Duluth. So you're in Minnesota, or you're in the Twin Cities now, and this is fantastic because I didn't follow you on Twitter before, or X as they call it now, but somebody retweeted your tweet last night, and it caught my attention. And I thought, well, what's up with this guy? Does he really know what's going on? Well, it turns out you did. So here I'm going to read this for listeners, and you can go on. You can follow Dan at Dan Green, Green, capital M, capital N, as in Minnesota. He says you post this video of all these black SUVs, looks very official, driving out of the governor's residence, and you say, I am live outside the Tim Walz residence. A bunch of black SUVs just rolled out. I'm not a betting man, but the vibe seemed very, quote, this guy just got picked as VP, unquote. Feel free to interpret that as you wish. So this is fantastic. Dan, how did you come upon this story?
Yeah, so I was just sitting there after work, and I'm a huge political junkie. And so I've just been refreshing my feed all day long, trying to see who Kamala picked as a VP, because there's supposed to be, like, usually there's like a leak a day before or something like that. So I was really just kept refreshing my feed. And then I was like, wait, I am literally like 10 minutes from Tim Walz's house. So I have to go get dinner anyways. So I was like, I'll go to Chipotle, but on the way, I'm going to stop by Tim Walz's house. And when I get there, there's maybe one person outside. And I was kind of surprised because I was like, this guy might be picked as vice president. He's down to the two candidates before it was earlier. I was like, why is there nobody here? But I walked up to the fence, and there was just black SUVs everywhere, people going in and out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm witnessing history. So I snapped a few pics of that, uploaded to Twitter, and then I was just like, okay, I'm going to wait in my car for 5 minutes. I was getting pretty hungry. I was like, I want to go to Chipotle. So anyways, I just was in my car. I was like, I'm just going to wait for 5 minutes, see if anything happens. And then this huge SUV motorcade just comes out of his house with cars that looked exactly like the Secret Service. And Twitter fact-checked me after and said, no, this was Minnesota Security Detail. And they put a little note to my tweet and said that. And that has now been taken off. So, so I personally think that was the Secret Service and that he found out last night. And I was there to witness it. And apparently, I think there was one other person there, and they posted the video like 10 minutes after I did, and they didn't go as viral as I did. So glad I was there in that moment, and on a whim just decided to do that. I was like, I'm just going to take matters into my own hands if I can't find the news. So that's how it happened.
And this is perfect because this is good old-fashioned citizen journalism. I have several questions here, if you don't mind. Number one, now I live in Madison. I'm from Southwest Wisconsin, not too far from the Minnesota border, but I live here in Madison now. And of course, the governor of Wisconsin, they call it the executive residence, and it's kind of more of a mansion-ish type building in a house with a lot of security. Is it similar to the governor of Minnesota? Is this the governor's residence, no matter who it is, or is this Walz's personal home?
So right now, the governor's mansion, which is like a huge mansion that every Minnesota governor lives in, is under construction. And so he was staying at the University of Minnesota's president's house. And so it's kind of like a mansion that the president of the university is supposed to live in.
Got it.
It's called East Cliff. And so that's the governor's mansion is under construction. And then so he's living here for now, but this is where he actually lives.
See, that explains. So I thought, man, it doesn't look like a whole lot of security for a governor. So that explains that. That's fantastic. Number two, again, I thought people were hating on you last night when they said, "Oh, that's just the Minnesota, governor detail." Again, I've been involved in politics before I got back into radio, and at least in Wisconsin, when Governor Evers travels somewhere, it's usually in 2 black SUVs, maybe 3 at the most, but usually just a couple. And there were at least a half a dozen from what looks like from your video. Is that right? I mean, how many vehicles was going in and out of there?
I would say I saw at least 6 or 7 that I saw, and they were going in, they were going out. There was people walking in, people walking out. It definitely did not look like a normal night at the governor's place. So, and yeah, I've been to political events here before in Minnesota. I've never seen that much security. And so my personal interpretation is he was probably chosen to be vice president, and they put additional security around him, regardless if it was the Secret Service or not. Right. He definitely was getting additional security that night.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. So tell me about, it looks like according to my Twitter I got up right now, you have 5,300 followers right now. How many did you have before this started going viral?
I had like 1,000. So I definitely I 5X'd it. So
That is fantastic. I mean, you have national people like Maggie Hammond from the New York Times. I mean, all these national people are following you last night.
and it's funny because I really had an inkling that I probably was going to go viral because I just felt like I was just in this moment in history. Nobody else was around. Had my camera. I was like, I have a feeling this might go somewhere because everyone was just waiting for news.
Right.
And so I was like, I feel like I might have the only scoop here. So it was a very unique moment for sure.
And there were, I mean, there was no, you couldn't really see, there was no like ABC or CNN guys or gals. I mean, you would have thought they would have been staking this out. And here you are, just, I don't want to say average. I mean, you've been in communication, but you're not like a full-time media person. And you scooped this story before anybody else.
Yeah, I definitely an average person. It's okay to say that. I was just like, in that moment, I think there was like one other camera person, and I don't know what station they were from, but yeah, I was very surprised that there was this massive story happening and nobody was there. So I was very happy to be the one to capture it.
Well, I think it's fantastic. I love the fact that you're just, a great, again, average Minnesotan, but you got this story ahead of everybody else. What can you tell us about a couple of minutes left here? What can you tell us about Tim Walz? What can you tell us what Minnesotans think about your governor?
Yeah, I think that the best thing about Tim Walz is I think that he's very approachable as a person and he's very down to earth, which I think is good for our politics right now as a nation. We have a lot of people who are really just out there in our politics right now. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I am someone who considers himself a little bit more of a moderate, and so I don't believe in everything that Tim Walz stands for. But I think overall, I think he's a nice temperamental choice for Kamala. I think he complements her in a lot of different ways, and I think he'll help get some of that Midwestern vote in the blue wall, as they call it, that needs to be won for Kamala to win the election. So yeah. I think it's a solid choice for her.
Well, I love in your Twitter profile, you talk about bringing people together. That's what we try to do. And we talk about what makes Wisconsin great. We talk about, and I'm sorry to tell you this, the Packers bring people together against the Vikings and, Wisconsin football against the Flexters and the Gophers. But I mean, here's a guy who's a hunter, who's a fisherman, who he seems just like everybody's dad or grandpa. And I think you're absolutely right. Tim Walz is the kind of person we could all relate to and bring us together.
I agree with that. Yes.
So quickly, about 30 seconds left. Is Chipotle going to give you any props for this? Are you getting any NIL money from Chipotle over this?
I really should. Today I have actually been crafting an email to them kind of laying out everything that happened. And I'm just going to say, I'm not asking for anything, but I think my video had 7 million views. So I'm like, and I put Chipotle right underneath it. I was like, I deserve at least a little something. So we'll see if they come back with anything.
Hey, Dan Green, thank you for making us your first interview. We appreciate it so much. You're welcome here anytime. Keep in touch and have a great day over there in Minnesota.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Dan Green getting the scoop over there in beautiful Minnesota. Back after this on the Todd Allbaugh Show on Civic Media.
Luke Mathers, can't help but notice you're already on StreamYard here.
That was absolutely
I'm just going to leave him.
Fantastic.
Unless Luke shoots me a message,
right.
I'm just going to leave him in the waiting room.
All right. That was absolutely fantastic.
Yes, it was.
take the skyway, high above the busy little one-way. In my stupid hat and gloves at night I lie awake, wondering if I'll sleep, wondering if we'll meet out in the street to take the skyway.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Is that a Minnesota?
It is Skyway by The Replacements, a band that is very much an embodiment of the Twin Cities.
Really? I did not know
And
that.
this is about some particular highways or skyways
done.
in the Twin Cities.
Nicely done, Mr. Zommers. On the board here, glad to have you along with us on the Allbaugh Show, 21 after the hour of 12 noon. How about that? Now, that's what we're looking for in this show. I mean, more of that, please.
Your sister agrees.
I mean, thank you. Dan Green, what a great guy. A communicator, and I say this with all due respect, as an average Wisconsinite, Dan Green, and he said he would call himself this, an average Minnesotan, who just has his antennae up. He's going to Chipotle because he's hungry, and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to hang out here a little bit. By the way, Jeff Perry, our ongoing contributor, says, I love The Replacements.
I thought he might.
Yeah.
I had an inkling.
So this Dan Green just on his way to Chipotle, hungry, and says, I'll hang out here. And he scoops the national media last night. And he's gotten like almost 5,000 new followers in less than like 12 hours.
That's just wild that nobody else was there checking it out. Like, you'd think they'd have people camped out at every possible place.
I know. I love every part of that story.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
And he seems like a genuinely great, fantastic guy. And he on his Twitter feed, he's got pictures of him jet skiing, a very Minnesotan thing to do, as it is here in Wisconsin as well. So he's got like national people after him. You're gonna see this guy Dan Green on national shows, and here he was on our little show first. So we appreciate that.
Hopefully you'll see him maybe in some Chipotle ads or something.
The guy, I mean, he deserves some props. I mean, this has been viewed millions of times. He's got Chipotle listed there. That's the beautiful thing about life. You never know what's going to happen next. If you want to weigh in on the VP pick, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Mr. Luke Mathers will be here at the bottom of the hour for Tuesday Tangents with Lukester. Of course, Luke predicted that it would be Tim Waltz a week ago on this very program. How about that?
At least you didn't bet him anything this time.
I knew better than to bet Luke again. Gonna play you some cuts. Let's get to know Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz. And for my money, this is a great pick. Kamala Harris had a lot of great choices to choose from. She could have gone for the Electoral College directly in Shapiro at Pennsylvania or Kelly with Arizona. Lots of different, you could have gone to the astronaut, of course, Kelly as well. Ratzenberger, the governor of Illinois. Buttigieg, kind of the overall likable, articulate dude. Had a lot of great people to choose from. But she goes to Minnesota. Governor Tim Walz, who, as we said, here's a guy who pheasant hunts, he ice fishes, he's a veteran, served a number of years in a leadership position in the Minnesota National Guard, a high school teacher, an educator, a guy who took a Minnesota high school football team to the national championship and won. This is a guy, as Trygve Olsen likes to say from the Lincoln Project, this is a guy who you'd like to be your neighbor.
Absolutely.
And now he is on the verge of being the vice president of the United States. Let's play this one cut before we go to the phone lines. We played this yesterday, the day before. This is fantastic. You want to know here's the kind of guy that we could have as our vice president. This is Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, being interviewed on a news program about being an average guy.
All right. Number two, it seems like elected officials are always surrounded by lots of people, staff, other lawmakers. What is the last thing that you did truly out in the public, truly by yourself?
I went to Menards and bought an air filter for my furnace.
Did you?
I went to, and he just says it matter-of-factly. I went to Menards and I bought an air filter for my furnace. Who amongst us hasn't done that?
And it's not just that he hasn't done it. It's that he thought about it for a second. He's like, Yeah, this was probably like 3 hours ago. Or like I don't know. It just came off so normal,
Yeah.
which is something we don't see from a lot of politicians these days.
He's a dude that everybody can relate to. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Let's go out to California and Los Angeles, California. LA Tom, thanks for calling in. What say you?
I am so excited because of the fact that I feel like we have a hope that we can have our democracy through Project 2025, which is what the Republicans want to do. And I hope you don't take offense to this, Todd, but I am going to start, if they keep on calling up and calling us the Democrat Party, I am going to start calling them the Republican Party because they're a bunch of cons, whether it's Foxconn or whatever it is. I'm really tired of them not respecting the name of our party. And I wanted to also say that Bon Iver is going to be playing tomorrow in Eau Claire.
Yes.
So I hope everybody goes and checks that out. Well, that's in that area. And I also wanted to say that for each of the conservative callers that have called in today on some of the previous shows, I've donated $50 in CJ's name. I've donated $50 in Cassandra's name. I've donated $50.
Let's not make it.
Gary
Let's not make it personal. And we don't want to make it personal, but it's good. It's good that you're participating.
I donated $250 today because of the fact that when people call up and they don't have facts behind what they're saying, and all they're saying is that someone is just a horrible person. That to me motivates me to actually donate more. So if they want, keep on talking, I'll keep on donating. But no, I'm just very, very, very excited about this opportunity. And I'm actually very excited for the Conservative Party as well, because this means that we actually may have a democracy going forward in the future. I mean, this is good for all of us.
Well,
this is not, and I think that's why the Lincoln Project's involved. I think that's why Liz Cheney's involved, and people like that, because they would like to maybe have a shot again at the White House, and things like that. And if Donald Trump gets in there, that's it. We're done.
LA Tom, always appreciate it. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Let's go to Mike in Jackson. Mike, thanks for listening and calling in. What say you?
Well, I was going to hold my nose and vote for Harris, but I was so excited about this pick because this guy is the real deal, and he is just going to communicate so much better, even than her, with the American people. And I think it's a wonderful pick. He's a centered guy. He's going to bring common sense. He's going to bring her down a little bit from the crazy left. And I think that's a winner. I really do. I thought if they went with Pete, loser. Kelly, no. Shapiro, no. But with this guy, he's got the upper Great Lake boys, and I like to hunt and fish and trap, but I also like a clean environment. This guy's a winner.
Yeah. I think you said it well from your perspective, and really appreciate the call, Mike. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. We traveled around the state so much over this last year, particularly this summer, and Mike just exemplifies that, right? I mean, people like the conservation, people like to hunt and fish, like a clean outdoors, a common sense type of person. Tim Walz is that. Going to come back, have Luke Mathers here, and some great cuts. Get to know Tim Walz. Gary from Germantown says, when's the last time Trump went to Menards, right? Back after this on the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Stay tuned for news.
Madison's home for Nightlight with Pete Schwaba.
Local radio for you and your community. It's Civic Media's mission with stations across Wisconsin.
All right, I have added Luke to the studio, so whenever he's ready, he
Tractors
will
have been a part of agriculture
show
for
up
well over
in here.
100 years, but they have changed a lot throughout that time. I'm Ben Jarb with Midwest Farm Report, and Steve Rodebush, the president of the Badger Steam and Gas Engine Club, was able to tell us how steam was able to power the engines of the original tractor.
Well, steam, you have a boiler and put water in it, and then you make steam. And then the expansion rate of steam is so great, so it's brought into the cylinder, and as it expands, it gives you the power. And the gas engines, They may run on kerosene, gas, diesel, just internal combustion engine, but really primitive gearing and steering. It's like anything, you know, two people can't always agree, and if you're not level-headed, you know, things happen.
Steve Rodebush, president of the Badger Steam and Gas Engine Club, telling us about how the original tractor engines were powered. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Ben Jarbo, and we'll have a midday news update right after this.
All right, team, pay attention to this game film about Pioneer brand Plenish High Oleic soybeans. See here, when dairy farms grow Plenish soybeans for their cows,
they have lower overall feed costs.
Good eye, Jake.
And they maximize milk fat production, so they increase the return on their investment.
Well, let that be a lesson to you. For lower feed costs and higher milk fat in dairy cows, what do we plant?
Pioneer brand Plenish High Oleic soybeans.
Learn more at pioneer.com/happycows.
When it comes to growing soybeans, you need an advantage. And with Zetavo soybean seed, you get a big one. 3.4 bushels per acre big. It's a yield advantage made possible by BASF genetics, proprietary germplasm, and industry-leading seed quality. Talk to your retailer today about staying ahead of the game with Zetavo soybean seed.
Welcome back. I'm Ben Jarb with the Midwest Farm Report, here with your midday news report. But first, remember to stay up to date with us on all things agriculture using our app, The Farm. You can download it at www.thefarmwi.com. Cornleaf aphids made an early appearance this year, but this has not been detrimental to the overall crop thanks to the rain. These pests typically have a worse impact in years where there are droughts, but this year's counts have not indicated a need to seek treatment. To stay on the bug train, the western bean cutworm flight is going strong. The trapping survey shows a state count of 11,871 moths and 69 traps, averaging 172 per trap, which is still below last year's record high that had 223 moths per trap. Although we are not out of the woods yet, as there are still 3 weeks left of monitoring, and peak activity is just starting in places north of Wausau. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Ben Jarbo.
Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
Clouds are clearing, giving way to partly sunny skies with highs in the low 70s.
Luke Mathers.
Luke Mathers.
Keeping our highs suppressed and dropping us tonight to the mid-50s. The sunshine stays on tap tomorrow when we climb.
It appears as though you are muted.
Currently, it's 64.
Can't hear you, Looster.
Is your computer so slow you can hardly use it? Does it have blue screen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
How are you bringing me in? I know.
Sound familiar? Computers will have problems, and when they do, you need the computer experts at
Get me on and up on StreamYard.
Yep. Well, I mean, as much as I can. It doesn't let me mute or unmute you.
I should be muted here and not muted on the walk one.
Finding the special healthcare resources families need just got easier. Wisconsin Wayfinder, Children's Resource Network, helps kids.
I have the walk one unmuted, but I wasn't hearing anything from it. It's weird.
Mental health conditions. Call toll-free 877-947-2929. Ask questions.
Test 1 2 1 2. I think we're good. Brian's
Nope,
gonna
still
give me some
nothing.
backup.
Yep.
No, I can hear me.
I can hear you faintly in my headset.
I cranked the volume on our end. Okay, here we go.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 34 minutes now past the hour of 12 noon on this Tuesday, August 6, 2024. High atop State Street, a block off the Capitol Square. Overcast skies in Madison today. Cooler, as Elmer Childress, longtime chief meteorologist of NBC 15 here in Madison, used to say, weather like this, he'd say, gonna be cool. Never pronounce the L, just cool. It's gonna be cool. So it's one of those cool days here at Madison. We will venture down the road to our beautiful studios in Waukesha, Wisconsin, downtown Waukesha at WAUK, where we find Lukester Mathers, the soothsayer, the crystal ball prognosticator extraordinaire. Lukester, congratulations. It's time for Tuesday Tangents. Luke, you nailed it a week ago. You called Tim Walz. What did you know that nobody else did?
I wouldn't say that I knew anything that anybody else didn't. I just had a good feeling that the Walz pick was going to be the one.
And you were right. And we had this. Did you hear that we were the first one to get this great guy Dan Green, who was outside the governor's residence last night, and was the first one to basically scoop this. That hey, you know what? There's a bunch of black SUVs and a lot of uncommon activity. It looks like Walz is going to be the guy, and it was just a great. And he was on his way to Chipotle.
I did not see that, but I saw that he was joining you, so it's really great that you got the scoop there here on Civic Media.
He got like 5,000 extra Twitter followers overnight. Like Maggie Haberman from the New York Times and all these people now, and he's got all these requests from national interviews, and he has the kindness to stop by our little dog and pony show first. So that was fantastic.
Look at you. Why are you selling yourself short? You're just like patting me on the back for guessing Walz correctly, which I don't know if you guess or not when you get it right. We were having this discussion of whether or not it counts as a guess. But I had a good feeling about Walz after the weird comments really struck a note. And the fact that we saw a lot from Governor Walz over the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks. And to be fair, I think it just made sense politically. There were some folks that wanted others, and it was a pretty deep bench. It was an interesting problem to see the Democrats have over the last couple of weeks. But I think all of the boxes get checked by Governor Tim Walz, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Harris-Walz ticket shapes up over the next, what do we got, 93 days or something like that?
Yeah, 90 some days, so it's getting close. Let's Luke, you mentioned this. We got several cuts lined up. We'll get to some of them this half hour, maybe more next hour. But Tim Walz, because this new kind of line, which is having a lot of traction as it turns out against the Trump-Vance ticket, is one word: weird. Just weird. Now, where did that come from? It came from now the nominee for vice president on the Democratic ticket. Here is Tim Walz on MSNBC about a week or so ago, or 2 weeks ago, coining the phrase in terms of politically for 2024.
What I know is that people like J.D. Vance know nothing about small town America. My town had 400 people in it, 24 kids in my graduating class, 12 were cousins, and he gets it all wrong. It's not about hate. It's not about collapsing in. The golden rule there is mind your own damn business. Their policies are what destroyed rural America. They've divided us. They're in our exam rooms. They're telling us what books to read. And I think what Kamala Harris knows is bringing people together around the shared values, strong public schools, strong labor unions that create the middle class, healthcare that's affordable and accessible. Those are the things. You look what they're talking about. They went right to division. They did not give us a plan on healthcare. Donald Trump talked about infrastructure. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris built bridges, built roads. So I think this is going back to the bread and butter, getting away from this division. We do not like what has happened where we can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner with our uncle because you end up in some weird fight that is unnecessary. and I think bringing back people together, well, it's true. These guys are just weird. And it's, you know, they're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something. That's what they go at. That's not what people are interested in. And there is angst because robber barons like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump gutted the Midwest, told us we didn't do that. They talk about private schools. Where in the heck are you going to find a private school in a town of 400? Those are public schools. Those are great teachers that are out there making a difference and gave us an opportunity to succeed. That angst that J.D. Vance talks about in Hillbilly Elegy, none of my hillbilly cousins went to Yale, and none of them went on to be venture capitalists or whatever. It's not who people really are. So I think that message doesn't resonate. You saw it yesterday. The energy out here exploded. We all broke fundraising records, but that's not what I look at. Door knocks are full. phone banks are full. People are talking about what's possible. We are finally on offense about an America where we're all together. So good. Have Orban down to Florida. The vice president will come out here and stand in a Planned Parenthood. She stands in a Planned Parenthood clinic in St. Paul. That's what people want to see.
There you go. Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, now the Democratic nominee for vice president. Luke, that's a guy, those are comments that you would hear anywhere from Germantown to Amory to Shawano to Richland Center, anywhere in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I have a feeling that that's something that resonates across the state of Wisconsin. I think it resonates across the entire Midwest, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the presumptive Democratic ticket is received when they have their rally in Pennsylvania today, and they're barnstorming across the swing states in the next couple of days here, Todd. So it's going to be very interesting to see the chemistry that the two have together and the excitement that comes with it for their campaign supporters coming out to these rallies, including in Western Wisconsin tomorrow.
Thanks for mentioning that. We're packing up the show once again. We got the tents and mules, and we're on the road. No, we have a truck, not just mules, but we're on the road. We're going to be doing this show live tomorrow from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, in the Chippewa Valley. Taking the show on the road. We will be there in the vicinity of the big event tomorrow in Eau Claire with Vice President Harris. And turns out, I think Tim Walz could just drive across the Mississippi River on the St. Croix Bridge. He'll be there in an hour or so. So it won't take him long at all.
I have a feeling it's going to take a little bit longer than that if he's coming from Philadelphia, though.
Yeah, he'll be on a nice plane, as it turns out. But yeah, well, we're doing the show tomorrow from there. Pat Kreitlow of Up North News Radio is going to join us as well, because there's a guy who knows the Chippewa Valley better than anybody else I know. And we're going to talk tomorrow a little bit about what this visit means. I think that Western Wisconsin is particularly important for anybody running for a statewide or a national office. And I just think it's a great move for Kamala Harris and her team and Tim Walz and their team to choose Eau Claire, Western Wisconsin, as the first place to come to.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I have a feeling it's going to be a very interesting event to cover as well tomorrow, because we're not only going to have one presidential and vice presidential event to cover. There's also going to be another vice presidential candidate there, J.D. Vance, the Republican nominee for vice president, going to be doing that kind of follow the leader thing. I don't quite get this, Todd. Do you understand this?
No, it's just they got no. And by the way, somebody pointed this out on the socials last night or early this morning. I was up at 5 o'clock, by the way, watching Morning Joe, thinking I was going to get.
I wasn't watching Morning Joe. I was just up at 5 a.m.
But a couple of notes. Number one, it ain't the Trumpster who's making these trips. He is down in Mar-a-Lago. He is not traveling. I'm not sure if he's not well, if he's just old.
He's got one trip, I believe, on his schedule this week, Todd. He's going to Montana, the very vital, important electoral state of Montana.
So Trump doesn't have the energy. He's very low energy. He doesn't have the energy to travel. He said in Vance out there. But here's a public service announcement, because I have family and friends that live up in Eau Claire, and I know there's a lot of moving going on this time of year, particularly amongst college students. Please don't leave your couches, davenports, and sofas on the street up there in Eau Claire tonight and tomorrow. You don't want the carnage. You just keep them safe, keep them in your house. Don't set them out while J.D. Vance is in town in Eau Claire. A public service announcement from the Todd Allbaugh Show and Civic Media. We don't need it. You understand, Luke's We don't need it.
Those poor couches. Those poor couches.
Exactly right. Let's take another cut here, Mr. Zommers, and get Luke's take on this one. Let's do the one on Governor Walz talking about going into American Legion halls, because I think this is really important that Tim Walz, if he already is a 12-year member of Congress, is the highest ranking member of the military ever to serve in Congress. So here's Governor Tim Walz talking about how he's going to relate on the stump.
That's what J.D. Vance's stick is, talking about guns. I guarantee you he can't shoot pheasants like I can. And that's a part of saying, but you know what? I guarantee I don't want weapons of war in classrooms, and there's no reason that you can't have reasonable restrictions around that without infringing on your Second Amendment. He's going in there throwing these things around that makes a difference. Democrats need to go into these places. I'm going to go in every Legion Hall I can go into and say, Vice President Harris will not cut your benefits. I sat in the VA committee for 12 years to increase those benefits with Republicans like Jeff Miller from Florida. This guy wants to cut them because it's in the 2025. We need to be bolder on that. We need to go out and say that.
I mean, Luke, I don't know any Wisconsin. I know very few Wisconsinites who would argue with that. Here's a guy that says, look, I take my shotgun or whatever. I'm a pheasant hunter, but we also don't need AR-15s in classrooms. I mean, that's a reasonable position, Luke.
It's hard to argue with a teacher, former teacher, on that as well. And I think that is a message that would resonate across Wisconsin from a message, because I think it's important to know here in Wisconsin, and I think it's the case, it's pretty applicable across swing states, but Wisconsin voters really are focused in on moderation, but not necessarily moderation in the individual like policy platform, but moderation in the way that folks really get a chance to interact with the candidates. And I think it's hard to say that Tim Walz of the two vice presidential nominees is the radical, is the leftist, is whatever the labels that are going to be thrown at him. I mean, he's a veteran. He can go into those Legion halls. He's a former teacher. He's a former football coach. I think he's going to have a harder time here in Wisconsin for the fact that he's a Vikings fan than for any of the extreme labels that right-wing and conservative politicians are going to label him with. And so I think he's very much is the approachable of the two between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. I think he's the approachable vice presidential nominee, and I think he does a very interesting balance for the Democratic ticket here in Wisconsin and across the Midwest and very vital swing states.
855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. If you've got a question or a comment for Lukester or myself, let's go to Dick listening here on WMDX in Madison. Dick, always a pleasure. What say you?
He reminds me of a book I read many years ago that was my grandpa's book, Plain Speaking, and it was about Harry Truman. He just tells it like it is.
Yeah.
No, like, for instance, one of the greatest clips I ever read in that book was about when the overthrow happened in Cuba and Batista was thrown out. He basically laid that, a lot of what happened, on Eisenhower. He said he wasn't paying enough attention. He said, this guy was 90 miles away. We should have had a meeting with him. I would have immediately. He was looking for economic support, and he could have been in our camp instead of the Russians. And that's the kind of guy that I think this guy is. He's just going to tell it like he sees it.
Yeah, I think
real blunt,
authentic, right? A real, just a straight shooter, an authentic kind of guy. Dick, always a pleasure. Yep. Thank you so much. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Luke, we've taken the show on the road a lot, but all over Wisconsin this year. And again, I think what you just said earlier, here's a person in Tim Walz who is in touch with real people. I mean, I hear, whether people lean to the left or lean to the right, a continual through line is, I want what's best for my kids, that our schools are our communities. And to your point, having a former educator, a guy who was born in Nebraska and basically grew up in Minnesota, a veteran, a teacher, a football coach, took his team and won a state championship. How much better can you get than that?
It's a pretty incredible resume, Todd, and I think it goes to show how many elected officials there are out there that aren't necessarily on the national platform, but how great of records we've got these folks running these governments around the country in the states, and when you get a chance to take a good look at them.
One of my favorite callers, one of my favorite beers, Wisco Paul on the other side. Don't go anywhere. It's the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Let's give you a new beer line called Wisco Paul.
All right. I was gonna say I don't think I said it on the air when I said that it was a Facebook exclusive when I said Tim Walz was gonna be the pick.
It was, but then Todd
Really?
said afterwards, he
Oh,
was like,
okay.
yeah, and Luke said this.
Oh, okay. But see, that's why people need to watch the stream, because you never know what's going to happen. It's how the sausage is made. You understand? How the sausage is made, brought to you by the Richland Locker in Richland Center. See how the sausage is made and the talk show during the breaks.
We need to get like how it's made sausage creation videos and just play that on the top of the screen during breaks.
Yes, exactly right.
All right, here we go.
Welcome back to the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network, the Violent Femmes. No, I'm not sure what
It is not. No, it's Husker Du, another band from Minneapolis.
Very good. It just sounded a little bit like the Violent Femmes. Great. We used to be on Letterman all the time. Back at the old Allbaugh Show Corral, it is 10 minutes before the hour of 1 o'clock here at Civic Media. Luke Mathers, Tuesday Tangents with Lukester. Always a pleasure talking about the big VP pick. It is Tim Walz, great Minnesota governor, will be the Democratic vice presidential nominee along with Kamala Harris for president. We'll go back to the phone lines, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. I said you were one of my favorite callers. I also think it'd be a great beer. Wisco Paul, always a pleasure. What say you?
Hi, good afternoon, gentlemen. Thanks for the compliment, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought Shapiro from Pennsylvania was a slam dunk on this one because if you win Pennsylvania, more than likely the Democrats going to win the election. That being said, since I've got to listen and see this Walz gentleman from Minnesota, I'm totally impressed. I mean, he's a veteran, which is totally cool, and I do believe I've seen him with a dog. So how can you go wrong with that? A man's best friend. So I'm pretty happy about the whole thing, and Minnesota is a totally cool state, and I didn't realize this guy was this good, but so I'm happy. So that's about it for today. We're just go out and win this thing. I never want to see or hear from Trump again the rest of my life. Thanks, Todd.
Always appreciate it, Wisco Paul. Luke, he brings up a great topic, dogs. I know you and your lovely wife now have two. Here's a big difference. Tim Walz, Democratic governor of Minnesota, treats his dog well, takes it for rides and walks and posts tweets about it. Kristi Noem on the Republican side, a Republican governor of North Carolina, shoots her dog. So, I mean, right there, I think if you're a
South
dog
Dakota,
lover,
not North Carolina. Hang on, just real quick. South Dakota, not North Carolina.
Did I say? What did I say? Oh.
You said North Carolina. So.
I thought I was going to say North Dakota. Sorry, she's in South. It's all the same out there, quite frankly. South Dakota, North Dakota.
Different portions of the country, Todd.
But the fact is, Kristi Noem shoots her dog, and that's not what you want. I mean, most people love their dog, and Tim Walz, he takes care of his dog. So if you're a dog lover alone, vote for Tim Walz.
Aurora got the official title today because she is with me here in Waukesha, the WAUK greeter. So she is greeting everybody as they come in, and she's having a good time for the most part.
And see, you take good care of your dog.
Well, I feel bad when I have to travel that she's got to be locked up all day if I don't take her with me. So it's the whole thing. But I do think it is very telling that still one of the first times that we did not have a dog in the White House in a very, very long time was during the Trump administration. Donald Trump, not a dog guy.
He hates dogs.
Not a dog guy. No. Granted, Commander Biden, not necessarily the most friendly and well-behaved dog, it sounds like. So he did get sent back home to Delaware. But, I think it is very telling that, and not only does Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota have a dog, he also has a cat. He's got one of each.
Yes. And remember, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, he goes to the Minnesota State Fair and eats deep fried food. Robert Kennedy Jr. eats dogs. So, I mean, right there, that's also a difference politically these days. 855-752-4842. Let's go to Mark in Perdisac. Mark, what say you?
Well, you just had to end on that and bring me in on that. Eating dogs.
Dog on a stick at the Kennedy fundraiser. Puppy chow has a whole new connotation.
I love dogs. I'd never think of eating one. You know, getting back to J.D. Vance. I mean, he's apparently going to be stalking Kamala Harris wherever she goes now. You know, following her. You know, following her around like. You know, that not only is he weird. I'm going to get the whole creepy stalker vibe from him now, right, with him having to follow her all around the country. I mean, the guy is, you know, that. The whole Egyptian thing kind of plays in here, you know, with him wearing the eyeliner, because you see those pictures of the Egyptians with the eyeliners on, you know, so he's stalking like an Egyptian apparently. So
this is real. What Mark brings up, this is real photographers. And again, I don't care if guys wear eyeliner or not, but it's the hypocrisy that Vance and these people are anti-drag show, and then they're wearing eyeliner. Just let everybody live and let live, right?
That's what I say too. I mean,
right.
that I've never, you know, the only time I've had makeup on my face is sometimes you're blacking out your face when you're going duck hunting and it's warm, and so you got play black and green and brown, you know, daubs on your face. But I mean, it is just.
It's hypocritical. I get it. Mark, we got to run. We got a lot of people on the line. I want to get to them for Luke here. Let's go quickly to Matt, listening to Middleton and WMDX. Matt, thanks for a call, and make it quick if you can.
Yeah, I just want to say I think Tim Walz is a great pick. I think he's probably the best. He brings that a guy you want to have a beer with, George Bush kind of friendliness to it.
Yep.
But he also maybe can speak to some of the progressive wins that Minnesota has had under his leadership. They've done a lot of good things there, and I hope he can speak to that too.
I think you just nailed it, Matt. The guy that you have a beer with, but also has more thoughtful kind of leadership skills and policy positions. Let's go quick to Tom and McFarland on MDX. Tom, what say you?
Hi, thanks for taking my call, and I'm also a big fan of the pick. With Walz, before he became the governor, he represented the rural districts within northern Minnesota. So he's able to bring that rural voice that somebody like Shapiro probably wouldn't be able to capture as well and as naturally. And by not going with Shapiro, this keeps Pennsylvania still in play, actually, just in terms of the governorship and the Senate seat. And I think that given Walz his strength as a rural representative, I think that's going to play very well within some of those districts in Pennsylvania.
Great.
So I think he's going to have all of the strengths that Shapiro would have, but none of those weaknesses like with Palestinians, et cetera, et cetera. So great pick.
Really appreciate the call, Tom. Luke, what say you, as someone who observes and has been involved in Democratic politics, what do you think this means, this pick, if anything, down ballot, particularly in Wisconsin?
Down ballot in Wisconsin, I have a feeling that Tim Walz is a candidate that can campaign with and for the range of different candidates that we have down ballot here in the state of Wisconsin. I see him as just a very relatable pick. I don't think that he's super. I don't think it's progressive. I mean, they had the thinnest margin of victory in Minnesota, and they delivered on the things that the people wanted. The school lunch program is popular, and he didn't shy around it. He defended it, saying, "I'm never going to apologize for making sure that kids' bellies are full when they go to learn." And it's an approach like that I think is going to resonate well with Wisconsin voters.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Always excited to have you, Lukester. It's a pleasure. No time to grind the gears, but we'll save it for next week. Because, Luke, there's always, well, not always, but a lot of times something grinds his gears. Thank you, Luke. We appreciate it. It's Tuesday, Tangents with Luke. Hour number 2, get to know Tim Walz. After this, it's the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Fantastic. We got a lot of calls. I'm sorry, dude.
You're good. You're good. Right. Don't apologize for the callers.
But thanks for joining as always.
Always a pleasure. I will talk to you later.
All right. Safe travels. Bye-bye.
Also, for the record, we were in that order on purpose, Luke, because if we change the layout,
maybe.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Switch it back.
I'll have to edit that layout, but.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes, you can reverse prediabetes and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. To learn your risk, take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
This is your hometown radio, refreshed, keeping you informed, entertained, and connected locally across the Civic Media Network. You're listening to Mad Radio, WMDX 1580 AM Columbus, W224EG Madison, and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. The Democratic ticket now taking shape. Vice President Kamala Harris choosing Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. Both will kick off a multi-state campaign in Pennsylvania with a rally in Philadelphia later today.
The 60-year-old governor is a military veteran, former member of Congress, and a former educator. He's enacted a robust Democratic agenda in Minnesota, including paid family and medical leave, protections for abortion rights, universal free school meals for students, and protections for gender-affirming care. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
Republican VP nominee J.D. Vance, also campaigning in Philadelphia today, criticized Walz and claims he's a far-left candidate. Elon Musk's X, formerly known as Twitter, is suing a group of advertisers, accusing them of a massive boycott, saying it cost the company billions and violated antitrust laws. And investors are in a buying mood today following yesterday's global sell-off. Stocks are up in afternoon trading. This is ABC News.
This news report is sponsored by Wisconsin Capital Management, LLC, serving their clients for 40 years. Visit wiscap.com.
Media News. I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. Communities around Wisconsin are getting money to reach out to people who need lead pipes removed. $900 million in loan money comes from the bipartisan infrastructure law. Communities can start applying at the end of the month. More than 37,000 lead service lines have been replaced or shut off in Wisconsin since 2018. Expect to hear more about reproductive rights from Vice President Kamala Harris as she campaigns for president. Marquette poll director Charles Franklin says it's the #1 issue for Democratic voters.
But independents rank it quite a ways down. And so I think it's possible that she may emphasize that issue more than Biden was doing. Whether that brings any independents over is an open question.
Franklin speaking with Wisconsin Eye. Harris and Republican running mate J.D. Vance will both campaign in Eau Claire tomorrow. I'm Terry Bell, Civic Media News. Here's what you need to know closer to home.
This is news from WMDX Madison. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. The city of Madison is writing more parking tickets. They stopped enforcing parking limits in 2020 when so many people were working from home and there were many fewer cars on the streets. The ISMIS reports in 2020, the parking enforcement team wrote less than half as many as the year before. They also had fewer staff members, but gradually they've gotten them back. All money from parking tickets goes into the city's general fund. Last year, that amounted to about $4 million. And one of Madison's most beloved places for families is now open an extra day. The Madison Children's Museum is now open 6 days a week instead of 5. It's normally closed Mondays and Tuesdays, but for the month of August, it's open Tuesdays. They'll even have special programming on Tuesdays, too, like Open Art Studio, Let's Move, and even a visit from the UW Genetics Department. Staff say opening for Tuesdays in August will give families extra options before kids head back to school. And that's what you need to know. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson, WMDX News.
The Brewers hold on to first place. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. The Milwaukee Brewers back to a 6-game lead in the NL Central Division. The Pirates are now in second. NFL, the Packers practiced all week before they head to Cleveland against the Browns Saturday night. The Badgers offense had a good day in their practice in pads at UW-Platteville. Quarterback Tyler Van Dyke with his best performance yet, hitting on some deep balls. Head coach Luke Fickell.
It's always going to be a winner. There's always going to be someone that doesn't win. That's the kind of the nature of the game.
And LA Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh still under fire as new evidence of cheating and sign stealing at Michigan are coming out in an NCAA report.
Never lie, never cheat, never steal. I was raised with that lesson. If you stumble, you apologize and you make it right. Today, I do not apologize. I did not participate, was not aware, nor complicit in those said allegations. So for me, it's back to work and attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
That's Jim Harbaugh with Sports. I'm Mike Clemens.
You can always continue the conversation on social media. Share your thoughts when you find and follow Civic Media on Facebook, X, and Instagram.
Clouds are clearing, giving way to partly sunny skies with highs in the low 70s. Winds a bit breezy out of the northeast, gusting up to 30 miles per hour, keeping our highs suppressed and dropping us tonight to the mid-50s. The sunshine stays on tap tomorrow when we climb just a bit warmer. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Currently, it's 65.
Looking for a place to kick back, grab a bite, vibe out on great music? Look no further than the Rigby in Madison. They're not just a pub, they're where the action is with something different every day. Rigby Okie Mondays, Trivia Tuesdays, single nights on Wednesdays, and live music Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Located a block off the Capitol Square at 119 East Main Street, stop by and take a tour of the venue spaces for your next private party, and the rooftop space is now available. For venue reservations and details, email Chelsea at events.rigby@gmail.com.
Wisconsin Capital Management in Madison is a registered investment advisory firm and has been serving their clients for the past 40 years. The firm is focused on providing investment advisory services to its affiliated mutual funds. Their approach to investment management is designed to provide competitive performance over the entire business.
Got about 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with Mr. Aaron Zommers, our producer and engineer. It is Tuesday, August 6, 2024. Glad to have you along with us. A great day to be a Wisconsinite, a great day to be a Minnesotan, a great day to be an American. 6 past the hour of 1 o'clock. Welcome into hour number 2 of the big program, high atop State Street, a block off the Capitol Square. Overcast here in the capital city of Madison. Most of the severe weather kind of moved through. And by the way, Mr. Zommers, huge shout out to one of our colleagues back in the old hometown, WRCO, Country and Community, FM 100.9 in Richland Center, Wisconsin, where I started back in 1987. Our colleague Tim Thied was up last night late, about 11:22, and a tornado warning came through for southwest Wisconsin. And Tim Thied was there live in studio and broadcasted a great job. And that is the value of local radio, which is replicated in all of our stations across this network, across Wisconsin. People like Tim Thied, who are up when others are asleep, who are there to provide critical and important information that can save lives. So hats off to Tim last night at RCO and for helping keep people safe.
Absolutely. And good job just being a resource for the community as we aim to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. Country and Community 100.9 Richland Center, Wisconsin. You can get it on the Civic Media app as well as you can get all of our fine local stations across the Civic Media Radio Network. So that means if you're traveling and you're like, well, I want to know what the heck is happening in this part of the state, just dial up the Civic Media app. It's free, takes less than a minute. It's what Gail King at CBS calls a deal. You just download the app and put it on the phone. You could scroll through all of our fine stations and listen to them across the Civic Media Radio Network. Many thanks again to Luke Mathers for joining us last half hour, and in addition to Dan Green from Minnesota, who broke this story last night that it was going to be Tim Walz because he was on his way to Chipotle and he recorded all these black SUVs, apparently some combination between Minnesota and Secret Service folks. He knew something was up, and now his Twitter feed doubled like 5,000 times. It's a great story, and turned out to be a very nice guy as well. That's what was cool about it. And Luke Mathers, of course, who predicted that Walz would be the nominee for vice president last week right here on this program. So we're off to a fantastic start. Your phone calls are welcome as well. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Want to get into more cuts of Tim Walz so we can, because I think a lot of people, even though he's right next door in our neighboring state of Minnesota, a lot of people aren't familiar with Tim Walz. I know I wasn't until I started kind of paying attention about a week or so ago. And again, he was born in Nebraska, grew up most of his life in Minnesota. His dad died at a very young age, ended up going into the military, had a great career in the military, especially with the Minnesota National Guard, a Minnesota National Guards person, Tim Walz, a high school social studies teacher. I could attest myself, whether it was Ken Thied or Ken Lewis, my two Kens, as it turns out, of social studies teachers, have these people, high school social studies teachers, by the way. I don't know anybody who's smarter, who understands history better, and who could contextualize life better than a high school social studies teacher, or middle school social studies teacher for that matter. Tim Walz, a former high school social studies teacher, and also coached the high school football team to a national championship. Here's a guy who's done it all. Want to play this cut before we go back to the phone lines? Again, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Mr. Zommers, let's do number 6 here. This is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz talking about J.D. Vance and gives some great comparisons to the two vice presidential candidates. Here's Tim Walz from about a week ago.
How are you going to build a water treatment plant in a town of 400 if you don't have a collective effort at it? So I have to tell you, they scream socialism. We just build roads and we build schools and we build prosperity into this. Their whole plan is to go backwards, to give tax cuts to the wealthy. And look, it was so surprising. These super successful Donald Trump, who inherited $400 million and then proceeded to fail at everything. Middle America, you earn it, but you know what? You're not on your own. Neighbors help neighbors. And I will, this one bothers me. I heard you talking about punching back at the bullies. They see people less fortunate as scapegoats and punchlines for their jokes. We see them as neighbors. And I said it with my mom. My dad dies when my little brother's young. We're teenagers. We get Social Security survivor benefits. I'm all for pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. We didn't have any boots. Social Security was the boots, and we pulled ourselves up, and we paid that back. And I think J.D. Vance gets none of that. It's the aw shucks, I'm from here or whatever. So my hillbilly cousins did not go to Yale, but I'll tell you what they did. They contributed to our community, and they're proud of it.
Look out for your neighbors. Stop being weird. The Governor Tim Walz way of politicking. We love to hear it. Thank you so much, Governor.
That's it in a nutshell. Help your neighbors and stop being weird. You can't say it more succinct, more direct, and in language that real people understand than that. Tim Walz is a person who gets Midwestern Americans, gets all Americans, but in particular gets us in Wisconsin, one of us as a Midwesterner. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Let's go to Stoughton and CJ listening in Stoughton on WMDX. CJ, what say you?
Thank you for taking my call, Todd. Yeah, I think it's a big win, actually, for the Republicans, and I am one. We know his record. It's kind of like Mandela Barnes. When we found out his record, we didn't want it the same way. That's why Kamala is in hiding as an answer to question in 2 weeks. She's a teleprompt artist. But
I'll let you continue. But let's just stop there. Let's stop there for a second. She's going to be in 7 states this week on live events with reporters in front of crowds. Trump doesn't have one national thing scheduled this week. He's sitting down there in Mar-a-Lago. So I just don't think that one holds water, but go ahead.
Well, he went to the National Association of Black
yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Where he refused to go on stage.
And yes, go ahead.
Well, you know what? He had the balls to be there. she didn't. And she won't, because she can't answer the questions, because her record is extreme liberal. The open border, this guy, she started the bailout fund in Minnesota, or she supported it. He wouldn't put criminals in jail during the riots as they burned down their city.
All right, let's stop there. Let's stop there, because this is a legit thing that already MAGA folks are saying, that Tim Walz wanted to make it possible for some former felons to vote. CJ, you guys have nominated a 34-time convicted felon in Donald Trump. So I don't think that argument holds much water, dude.
I certainly do, because those are trumped-up charges, and they'll be overturned in appeal.
Oh, they're just trumped-up charges because they sat. Okay, got it. Got it.
I mean, who's the one that supports an open border? Which ones support an open border? We're living.
Democrats and Harris. She does
Biden.
not support an open border, CJ. That is a false
Really? And
narrative.
she's not the borders are, right?
She was put in.
Todd?
We talked about that on the show. Actually, she was put in charge by President Biden to go to Central American nations like El Salvador, which has gone from one of the highest populations of. All right, let's turn CJ off. I tried to have a conversation. I try once in a while, but let's do the border for a second. Kamala Harris was put in charge by President Biden to go to Central American nations like El Salvador, who, again, I don't agree with the current president, Nayib Bukele's way he's done it, but he has lowered crime, and El Salvador has gone from one of the highest undocumented countries crossing the border to one of the lowest. And Biden said, hey, maybe we should get thoughtful and think of how we could work with these countries to improve conditions in the country so as to stem undocumented immigration. She began that, and it has gone down. And we are at the lowest border crossings in the last 2 or 3 years. It has gotten better. And remember, conservative Republican, MAGA Republican, or conservative Republican James Langford of Oklahoma wrote the bipartisan bill on immigration that was ready to pass, and Donald Trump ordered MAGA Republicans in Congress and the Senate to kill it. That's the truth about the border. So let's just keep people honest. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Gail, listening in Beaver Dam. Gail, thanks for calling. Let's see.
Yeah, first, 5 stars for Civic Media. Great show, guys.
Appreciate it.
We all know Trump's a coward and a con man. My crystal ball says it's going to get so dire for Trump, he will bail, leaving the Republican Party in complete chaos.
Really? Now, that's a hot take. You think that Trump is going to withdraw as well?
Yep, it's going to get so dire, the crystal ball says he's going to bail, leaving the Republican Party in complete chaos.
Wow. That is a take. I mean, would that be something? I mean, what would they do then, right? I mean, I don't know.
The saga continues. Get the popcorn and beer ready. It's going to be a while.
I like that.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Hey, thank you. Keep her between the lines up there at Beaver Dam. Great place, Beaver Dam. Gail and Beaver Dam. Love it. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. LA Tom, by the way, comments that earlier comment by our caller there on where was Kamala Harris at the Black journalist event. She was at a funeral for Sheila Jackson Lee. So, I mean, are you going to criticize people for going to a funeral of a longtime colleague and friend?
Right. It's not like she wasn't doing something
right.
important.
Yeah, exactly. And again, Harris is going to be in 7 states this week, along with Tim Walz, with reporters. We're going to be up there in Eau Claire tomorrow. Tune into the show. It's going to be great fun. Our good friend and colleague Pat Kreitlow of Up North News Radio will be here with us tomorrow on location from Eau Claire. We have more on this show. Your calls as well. Don't go anywhere. It's the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
You have PJ and Andrew and Maine asking LA Tom to make another $50 donation in a caller's name. Also, Andrew and May bringing up another point. Trump was invited to that event, not Harris. It wasn't like a debate. So why would she go if she wasn't invited?
Oh, good point. Good point. All right. We'll play a couple more of these cuts here. Can you queue up? I'm not going to use it right away, but just that Menards thing without the question. I just want the answer.
Okay.
We should make that into just a thing we can use.
Yes, we should.
Whenever I want to. Yeah. Welcome back to the Civic Media Radio Network, the Allbaugh Show here at 20 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock on Tuesday, August 6th, 2024. Zomer's on the board. Glad to have you along with us. If you want to call in, welcome you, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. One of our callers here, Mary in Tosa, listening in and says, listening to Civic Media's Native Media Awake will give good Minnesota take on their Governor Tim Walz joining VP Harris on the campaign trail tonight from 9 until 10. This is
Native Roots Radio is another name you will often hear by.
Yep. This is a great reminder, and I appreciate it, Mary. Our friend and colleague Robert Pilot on that program from 9 until 10. So it goes by two names. I'm a little confused, Mr. Zommers. Are they using two names or?
So it's Native Roots Radio.
Right.
But I believe they have Awake as a big theme or a segment title.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was correct on that. But Native Roots Radio, a great program, a great Native American perspective, and this brings up a great point, Mary. And someone tweeted this out this morning saying that about Walz, and is just as excited about future Minnesota Governor Penny Flanagan, who would be the first Native American woman to serve as governor and who got her start in politics at 25 years old as a school board member. Says building a diverse bench pays off. So if Harris and Walz would win, that means the lieutenant governor, Peggy Flanagan, would take over Minnesota. And if so, she would be the first Native American woman to serve as a governor in the United States of America. Now, how cool is that? And I believe, I'll stand corrected, Robert or Mary can correct me, but I believe the lieutenant governor has been a guest on Native Roots Radio with Robert Pilot. So there you go. Tune in tonight on Civic Media from 9 until 10. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Want to get to a couple more of these great cuts, getting to know Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, now the Democratic nominee for vice president. The more you hear this guy, the more it just makes a sense. Let's go to cut 5, if we can, Mr. Zommers. This is Governor Tim Walz talking about Democratic issues and just kind of laying this out. Here is Tim Walz from a few days ago.
Who's asking for this crazy stuff? Who's asking to raise the price of insulin? Who's asking to get rid of birth control? They do these focus groups or whatever. Who's sitting in a bar in Racine, Wisconsin saying, we need to ban Animal Farm? Nobody is. They're talking about real things. So when these guys get in situations in front of real people and trying to pretend like they know what people are going through, they've got nothing to offer. And no one can picture them in their own lives. I brought this thing up that Donald Trump tries to mock Vice President Harris for laughing. And I made the point, you never see this guy laugh. You never see him do these normal things. Imagine when I go home at night, I pick up the Frisbee and throw it, and my dog catches it, he comes over, he gets the belly rub for being a good boy. Picture these guys doing that kind of stuff. They just can't. And what it allows us to do is, we hear you where you're coming from.
How about that? Also had the smartness and the quickness to call out Racine, Wisconsin, and knows how native Raciners pronounce it even.
Even other people around the state often say Racine, but
Right.
Racine, if you live there, is how you say it.
Yeah. I mean, here's a guy who knows Wisconsin in Tim Walz. And he's right. As I said, one of the cool things about this job, one of the blessings, one of the opportunities is I get to travel. And I get to go out in our communities across the state of Wisconsin. And Governor Walz is absolutely right. I mean, two things that I don't hear often or at all when I'm in Amory and River Falls and Chippewa Falls and Green Bay and Richland Center and Wisconsin Dells and Eau Claire and New Glarus and Milwaukee. Two things I hardly ever hear at all, or if at all. Quote unquote illegal immigration and Palestine. Two of the kind of extreme views on the right and the left. Guess who's not talking about those things? Most of Wisconsin. What I do hear from people at state fairs and county fairs, at bakeries and parks and grocery stores and hotel lobbies, working people in Wisconsin, what Governor Walz just said, the price of insulin, of health care. They're concerned about their kids' future, the cost of daycare, the cost of sending kids to school, having good schools, community schools, public schools, higher education, public higher education in Wisconsin, conservation, clean water, affordable housing, the cost of housing going up. Those are the things that I've heard firsthand from spending the summer traveling around Wisconsin. And that's what Tim Walz gets. Because he's a normal guy. Because what does he do, Mr. Zommers? I'm sorry.
I went to Menards and bought an air filter for my furnace.
That's it. That's exactly it. Because he goes to Menards and he buys an air filter for his furnace. We're gonna use that so many times between now and November. You will get sick of it, but I don't care because I love that because it's exactly what Wisconsinites do. And it epitomizes the type of candidate that we need in America. Not just a candidate, the type of vice president.
The type
of
person.
leader. Yes, the type of person who's not all hoity-toity and consumed with either the left or the West Coast or the East Coast. Who knows Wisconsin values? Who knows Midwest values? Quite frankly, that's not weird. Tim Walz, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Do we have time for the Minnesota State Fair one? Probably not. That's kind of longer, isn't it? We do? All right, very good. So this is fantastic. This is Tim Walz going to the Minnesota State Fair with his daughter.
Hey, Minnesota, Governor Walz here out at the State Fair with my daughter.
Hope.
Every year we as a family do something old and something new. I get to pick something, a classic, the old mill ride, to do that. And then Hope gets to pick something new.
I think we're going to go do the slingshot.
Which I don't know what it is, and they're keeping it from me. But then we're going to go get some food, corn dog.
I'm vegetarian.
Turkey then. And
Turkey's
then,
meat.
Not in Minnesota, turkey's special. And we will go do some of those things and report back.
Here they are on the slingshot, which is a
fair
slingshot.
Yeah, it's like a fair ride. It's like a big bungee where you have you sit together, a tandem bungee jump. And they have like a GoPro camera and he's going up and down. The governor of Minnesota with his daughter. Here we go.
Yes!
That was good. Good job, Dad.
Oh, thanks, Hope. All right, Minnesota, it's worth it. Woo. Wow, that is wild.
That was pretty cool, actually.
That is wild.
Awesome. Now see right there. That's the kind of vice president you want.
It was so worth it. Good call.
It was good.
Thanks for talking me into it.
Governor Walz with his daughter Hope on a fair ride And he's like, we're going to get some food afterwards. And he says, corn dog? And he's like, she's like, I'm a vegetarian. And he said, okay, turkey dog. And she's like, turkey's meat, Dad. And he says, not in Minnesota, it's special.
It was so funny.
Back after this, it's the Allbaugh Show on Civic Media.
MDX. Enjoying this local program? Find the complete Civic Media lineup at civicmedia.us or the Civic Media app.
Civic Media News. I'm Terry Bell. Here's what Wisconsin needs to know. Working people in Wisconsin need more opportunities to boost their income. That's according to Robert Craig of Wisconsin Citizen Action. He recommends more access to job training programs.
A lot of the workforce training programs we have are helpful to a number of people, but they don't move the inequality numbers because they don't reach enough people.
A new University of Wisconsin study finds income inequality is growing in Wisconsin, although the problem is worse in other states. Wisconsin wildlife officials are.
I have another song from a Minnesota band. It's called Debbie Downer. It starts with "Quick Trip 4 in the morning" is the first line. But it's about somebody who is really pessimistic and finally finding, you know what, things are turning up in life. Maybe it's not all that bad. And I feel like that's fitting.
All right, very good, very good.
Here's what you need to know closer to home.
This is news from WMDX Madison. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. You may notice fewer butterflies and bees this summer. We've had so much rain, and that rain does help grow pollinator-friendly plants, but it also grows mold and fungi that can be deadly to caterpillars. Plus, lush greenery can make a perfect home for butterfly predators like stink bugs or paper wasps. Climate change makes a difference in this whole equation, too. If you'd like to help pollinators like bees and butterflies have plants they like that bloom not just in the summer, but early and late in the season, too. Anywhere in partial sun and blocked from the wind can be perfect for them. And Ride the Drive is this weekend, and they need more volunteers. The event celebrates alternative modes of transportation, with streets open to people on bikes or just their own 2 feet. About 400 volunteers are needed for the event on Sunday. 300 will be dedicated just to guiding traffic. And if you aren't participating, at least now you know there will be street closures downtown on Sunday. And that's what you need to know. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. This is WMDX News.
We've used all the other ones now, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. The Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez divorce has been injected with some actual Hollywood-style drama.
Carolyn
According
Madison
to Suge
has
Knight,
some pretty
illicit
good
videos of
suggestions for
Lopez
Secret
were
Service.
found when the
That's
FBI raided Sean Diddy Combs' properties a few months ago. The former Death Row CEO claims the FBI gave the videos to Affleck as a solid to prepare him in case the videos potentially went public. Knight is apparently basing this all on the timing of the issues between Affleck and Lopez. Combs has been accused of crimes ranging from sex trafficking to sexual assault. What are the effects of divorce for a middle-aged man? For Ben Affleck, he sought counsel from his ex-wife Jennifer Garner, who eventually had to excuse herself from being her ex's therapist. Affleck is also rocking a faux hawk like Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. This all comes as TMZ reports that Affleck and Lopez are not speaking to each other. In the meantime, Ben Affleck will presumably be on the lookout for a new girl named Jen while looking like Travis Bickle. For more showbiz fun, tune in to Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 7 to 9 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
This is your local Civic Media radio station. Want to hear even more? Anytime? Find all of it at civicmedia.us.
Clouds are clearing, giving way to partly sunny skies with highs in the low 70s. Winds a bit breezy out of the northeast, gusting up to 30 miles per hour, keeping our highs suppressed and dropping us tonight to the mid-50s. The sunshine stays on tap tomorrow when we climb just a bit warmer. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Currently, it's 68.
Burlow has a lifetime comfort guarantee because you can't risk it when it comes to that all-important, never long enough, cozy dreamland we call sleep. You can't let something like a mystery-made mattress in a box get between you and that much-needed shut-eye. We will adjust the comfort of your mattress for its lifetime, and we call that a lifetime comfort guarantee. And for that, you gotta go to Verlo. American-made, locally crafted, welcome to Verlo.
Hi, this is Paul Soglin. When I was mayor of Madison, Samba Balde was Common Council president. I counted on him to fight for a fair share of city services for all Madison residents and to protect taxpayers' interests. I know you can count on him to be a progressive state senator. Vote for Samba Balde for Senate on August 13th.
Paid for by Samba for Senate.
Quick drill, 4 in the morning. Soft drink, candid, the guy fired. Oh, you can keep the change now. 'Cause things are kind of fine now. I quit texting my toxic friends. I quit wishing the world would end. Will somebody explain it? Or read it like a warranty?
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. It's 34 minutes now past the hour of 1 o'clock on Tuesday, August 6th, 2024. Mr. Honors, a little bit more Minnesota music in honor of Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, now VP pick.
Yeah, that was a little cut from Debbie Downer by Landon Conrath, another Twin Cities artist who I saw at Mile of Music in Appleton last weekend.
Really? Very good. See, I mean, this is what we can agree on, even though we can get a little salty with each other between the Packers, the Vikings, and the Gophers and the Badgers. We can agree on music. I mean, whether it's that group from Minnesota or Bon Iver in Eau Claire, which, by the way, is performing tomorrow in Eau Claire. We're going to have the show live from the venue tomorrow in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, as Kamala Harris and Tim Walz make Eau Claire one of their first stops on their tour after tonight in Pennsylvania. And we're going to be there. So tune in tomorrow. We'll be live from Eau Claire, noon until 2, along with Pat Kreitlow. Going to the text line here on WMDX, Carol in Madison. This is a great text. Since Governor Walz is the vice presidential candidate, I have some suggestions for his Secret Service name, Hot Dish, which very Minnesotan, very Wisconsin.
Yes, Hot Dish is on his way. ETA 5 minutes.
Yes. Ope. That's the Ope. That's very Charlie Barron's and Manitowoc Minute. Lutefisk and Hockey. Or hockey, maybe hockey puck. That's the old Don Rickles line.
All good stuff. What are you looking at, you hockey puck?
Right, exactly. That's fantastic. Really good stuff. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. What do you think of this pick by Vice President Harris of Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, to be her running mate today? Go to the phone lines on WMDX here in Madison. Joe, listening in Madison. Always a pleasure, Joe. What say you?
A couple of points I wanted to make. First off, just playing off of the Secret Service name, I have not confirmed this, but somebody had mentioned that Governor Walz actually has a hot dish that has won some awards, and I think the name of it was something like, Turkey Trot Tater Tot, which, since I'm a big fan of tater tots, I was quite impressed with that particular culinary exercise of his, if that's the way it goes. And I wanted to encourage people to take a look at that clip that you played of Governor Walz with his daughter tackling the slingshot at the state fair. And I think there's some points on it that are very interesting to me. Number one, you look at him, and he's with his daughter, and obviously great affection there. And his fashion choices were fascinating to me because he's wearing a camel baseball hat and a Springsteen T-shirt. And I thought, you are going to the fair and you're wearing what makes you feel comfortable. You know, this is what people do when they're at the fair. Obviously, we've seen him, on the public speaking circuit, and he looks very refined, very, very fashionable, what he needs to be. I think he's an adaptable person. He's a person who he's had to adapt. He didn't grow up wealthy. He grew up, his dad died young. He went to National Guard route. He went, as I understand it, he got his college through his service to the country. He went on a GI Bill. And as I understand, he got a master's degree too. And I think there's something about being a teacher. You got to learn how to think on your feet, and you have to learn how to control the situation, how to think quickly and to pull facts and to sort of read the other people and manage that room. I'm telling you, young kids can be a room full of trouble. They can be a lot to handle. So, and I think that the other thing that's interesting about this video clip is that he's obviously having such a great time with his daughter. And I would contrast that with Mr. Vance, who in this last week talked about the moment that he heard that Trump might be calling him about a VP possibility, and his son was interested in finding out if his dad could watch him with some Pokemon stuff. And apparently J.D. Vance said, and I can't believe he said this, he said, "I told my son to shut the hell up." And I thought, oh my God, he's a 7-year-old. You don't model that kind of behavior. Maybe a 14-year-old, but not a 7-year-old. And I thought, there's a real contrast there of, you could have just said, "Daddy's busy." Or why would you even mention that you lost it and said, "Shut the hell up" to your 7-year-old? I thought it was just an illuminating point, sadly, an illuminating point. So thanks.
Yeah. Hey, always appreciate it, Joe. Thank you so very much. And in fact, Mr. Zommers, wherever you have it, after the next call, maybe we'll take. I just sent that clip that Joe just talked about is true, and he talks about it being true. We'll take it in just a minute, where he actually told his 7-year-old kid to shut the hell up, I believe is the quote, when Trump called him to give him the news. And Joe's absolutely right that if you look at these clips of Tim Walz with his daughter Hope, they have a special bond, a special girl-dad bond in terms of how they understand each other, the love between them. And here's a guy who seems to be, by all accounts, a great father. Now, you could talk about family values, or you can live family values.
He is definitely doing the latter.
And Tim Walz is a guy who certainly seems to live his family values. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Let's go out to beautiful Crawford County out there in southwest Wisconsin. Ross calling in Crawford County. Ross, any storm damage last night? I know a lot of severe weather over there by Eastman and that area. How'd you fare?
Yeah, right over by Rolling Ground and Soldiers Grove. What I'm seeing is mostly just kind of some big limbs, sort of big limbs that are sort of, got on the ground and such. I haven't seen like major tree damage or anything, or building damage, anything like that.
Okay. Good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, so hopefully not, at least that's where I'm looking. Joe had good points. My little 2 cents worth is it seems to be like the everyday kind of guy of Governor Walsh versus kind of this aggrieved and sort of ornery kind of hillbilly attitude. But going to Kamala Harris's choice on Walsh, what it seemed to be important to her. Like a lot of times we strategize. You say, if you get the guy from Pennsylvania, you'll get this vote, or if you might get the border vote if you vote for Kelly down there in Arizona. But I think what she looked for was somebody that was going to be on her team, be supportive. And I'm imagining she's eyeballing this person, and she wants to make sure that this guy, who in this case is Walsh, is going to support her thick and thin. And from what I understand, Walsh was supporting Biden up to the very end. So I sometimes think we strategize, but it's also from the candidate's point of view, it's like I need somebody who's going to have my back.
Well, I totally agree on that. I mean, I think that oftentimes we as media or political prognosticators, we try to, the electoral college, you try to put all the numbers and science into it, right? But more often than not, the presidential candidate just wants someone that they can vibe well with, somebody that they trust. So I totally agree with you, Ross. I think that, and reports were that this decision came late last night or even early this morning, and that the vice president really thought about this. And I think Ross is right that a lot of it was just kind of coming down to how do you feel about all these people? How do you work with them? 855-752-4842. Mr. Zommers have a comment from our ongoing contributor, Jeff Perry, off of Facebook, says, it isn't interesting. J.D. Vance, Derek Van Orton, yelling at kids. They do not appear to be concerned about how that makes them look, do they? Great point.
I think it's a feature and not a bug. They want more people who are, I am the man of the house and I'm in control and I don't care about you girls and kids and screw off.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. 855-752-4842. Let's go back to the phone lines. Keith in Middleton on MDX. Keith, thanks for listening. What say you?
Your guy there is absolutely right. That is a feature, not a bug of that system right now. Those guys are,
Anyway, I was, to be honest with you, I was really kind of not leaning towards Walz. I kind of wanted somebody a little more middle of the road, maybe a little more moderate. I was looking for Kelly, and we talked to you and I the other day about Adam Kinzinger being an awesome choice. But as it's going on here, he's becoming real popular, being very well received. And I also kind of wonder if it's not maybe a little nod towards the far left of the Democratic Party, because I really did not want to see 2016 happen again with the far left of the party leaving and voting for Jill Stein. So hopefully that'll hold them, because they can't do that again. That was ridiculous.
I think you bring up a good point, Keith. And yeah, as you read the articles and kind of read between the lines, there was certainly the progressive wing of the party that seemed to want Tim Walz, and that keeps them appeased and happy, I guess. But I think that Tim Walz is one of those kind of just unicorn magical candidates where he does appeal to everyone, or at least maybe not to everyone, but a broad spectrum of voters. He's the kind of person that can say, yes, I believe that our kids should not be hungry in our public schools, and give them lunches and breakfast. I also pheasant hunt. And I think that people have the right to have firearms to go hunting, but we should have reasonable gun control laws that we don't need, AR-15s in classrooms. That's a pretty reasonable stance, in my opinion. So he a guy that can go into, as he said earlier, this cut, go into American Legion halls as a veteran, highest ranking military person to serve in the United States Congress for 12 years, who is on the Veterans Affairs Committee, who knows veterans issues, who's fought for veterans issues. So you find a person like that, and who can also just communicate well, and you vibe well with them, that's somebody you got to take a serious look at, and Kamala Harris did. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. I want to play this clip we mentioned. Joe mentioned this. This is J.D. Vance in an interview, I believe, last week, talking about when Trump gave him the call for VP and how he treated his kid.
So I'm like, oh no. So I call Trump, and I'm like, hey, sir, what's going on? He's like, JD, you missed a very important phone call, and now I'm going to have to pick somebody else. And I like tense up and almost have a heart attack. And the crazy thing about it is my son, who's 7, is in the hotel room with me, and he's really into Pokemon cards right now. He's going through a Pokemon phase. Are you guys into Pokemon?
I am. Back in the day,
Okay,
that's a big phase right now, I think, in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's really into it. So he's trying to talk to me about Pikachu. And I'm on the phone with Donald Trump, and I'm like, son, shut the hell up for 30 seconds about Pikachu. This is the most important phone call of my life. Please just let me take this phone call.
I don't have children. I have 2 godsons that are as close as I'll ever get. I have 2 nieces. I watched the parents of my godson and my sister and brother-in-law raise their children. I don't know any loving, legit parent who turns to their 7-year-old and says, shut the hell up, when all the kid is trying to do is get your attention and love. That's a signal to me that this guy ain't all there. And his temper is dangerous. And he's not the kind of person that you might want to trust with, say, I don't know, nuclear codes. Not a caring person. On the other side, we have Tim Walz, who goes on fair rides with his kid, takes time to hang out with her, a girl dad. It's the kind of person I want to vote for vice president. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. When we come back, speaking of that, we have this, we'll play a little bit of it at least. They made a great public service announcement recently in Minnesota about hands-free driving, a bill that they just passed and Governor Tim Walz signed into law. Tim Walz and his daughter Hope did a video that they put out, and it's really funny. Because again, to Tim Walz's point and other callers' point today, here's what I've learned about life. If you're not afraid to laugh at yourself, a little self-deprecation, it shows that you don't have some maniacal ego, and you're usually a pretty good person. Donald Trump can't laugh at himself. There's no self-deprecation. Tim Walz is definitely able to laugh at himself. We'll give you the cut, the clip in his own words when we come back. It's the Allbaugh Show for a Tuesday on the Civic Media Radio Network.
I went to Menards and bought an air filter for my furnace.
That's fantastic. Welcome back to the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. It's 10 before the hour of 1 o'clock. That's, 2 o'clock. It's gone by so fast, but a fun show today. 10 minutes before the hour of 2 o'clock. That's 10 minutes away from CBS and ABC News time, depending upon which of our wonderful Civic Media stations you're listening to. A check of weather sports with Mike Clemens. Well, I think he just does sports, but we have one of our lovely weather people. Then Mike Clemens will check in on sports, doing a great job covering Packers training camp. And then the award-winning Maggie Dawn Show every afternoon following us from 2 until 4. Maggie Dawn right after us. Stay tuned for that great program. Want to finish up a little bit more here on Governor Walz, Tim Walz of Minnesota, the vice presidential pick of Kamala Harris. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. So they passed a bill. Walz signed it into law, a hands-free driving bill. And oftentimes you get people and professional actors, whatever, to get public service announcements out. But what Walz did is he has this great relationship with his daughter, and so they make this video. And they left the bloopers in of just them off the cuff. And they said, oh, this might be funny. And I think it is. We're going to play you a little bit of this. Here is the public service address announcement and the blooper outtakes with Governor Walz of Minnesota and his daughter on hands-free driving.
Hi, Minnesota. Governor Walz here, along with
Hope.
We're making sure we remind all of you hands-free driving starts on the 1st of August. We want to make sure our teen drivers are not texting and...
No. I think it's actually mostly bald men.
Cut. All right, once again, Minnesotans, we're here making sure millennials are putting down the phone. And
I think it's actually adults, Dad. Like older people like you.
Cut.
Hey guys, this is Hope Walz and I'm here with my dad, Governor Walz. And we're just here talking about the new hands-free law, and I'm just going to show him how to prop his phone up so it's not in his hand and he can still see his navigation. All right, just like this.
Cut. Hey, Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz here. Governor Walz here trying to get rid of a child for anyone. On the 1st of August, Minnesota's new law is hands-free, making sure teens aren't Snapchatting.
I think it's everything, like texting, calling, like it's all hands-free, not just Snapchat, Dad.
All right, cut. One more time. Turn it down.
Why?
We're making a distracted driving video and you have the radio up too loud. Hey, Minnesota, Governor Walz here, along with Hope, who listens to the radio too loudly. Well, it's a distracted driving video we're trying to make.
slow-mo.
Hey.
Keep both hands on the wheel, phone out of sight, out of mind.
Good advice. You are ready for college.
Cut.
So make sure when you get in your car,
Your hands free.
in states that have hands-free driving, we reduced fatalities and accidents by over 15%. We want to make sure that everybody gets home safely. Hope, any advice for Minnesotans?
What he said.
It's not worth it, Minnesota. Put the phone down. It's the law of the land. More importantly, it's going to keep Minnesotans safe.
I'm glad I get to drive on the roads with this law in effect.
There you go. A little public service announcement from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and his daughter Hope. Where she says, I think he talks about kids, and she's like, it's mostly bald men. I can relate. Not afraid to laugh at
Do you
himself.
text while driving? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I'm doing it much less. Doing more voice texting now. But here's on the other side of the aisle. As we said, you got to laugh at yourself, self-deprecation. On the other side of the aisle, here's what Donald Trump said last week at a rally.
But, you know, when I was building the wall, I said, you have to give us 28,000 soldiers. And they laughed at me. I hate when people laugh at me. I hate it. I hate it. No, it's so disrespectful. They laughed at me. We won't do it.
See, even the crowd laughed at that because they thought he was joking. He wasn't. Trump hates to be laughed at. He loves it when we go after him and argue and push back and fight. He loves that.
Makes him feel powerful.
What he doesn't love, what he hates, is being laughed at and made fun of. Like most bullies. 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Let's go to Robert, listening down WAUK in Waukesha. He's in West Dallas. Robert, thanks for calling in. What say you?
I just want to make a few comments. I think this is a really poor pick. Kamala just shed an older Joe Biden. And then to put Tim Walz in, if you look at his picture, the guy looks like he's 65, pushing 70, easy.
He's
But
in his
doesn't
late
really
50s,
help.
like 59.
Yeah, he looks like he's about 70. The other thing is, does anyone really think Minnesota's not going to go blue? Or would they be better off with someone like Mayor Pete, who's young, energetic, and gives you a chance to close the gap in a state like Indiana, and someone who's competent? I don't know what the mindset is of the Democratic Party of taking people out of positions of power and then sliding them into a VP pick. I think this is a terrible idea. I don't think there's going to be any excitement for him. Young people are the ones that come out, knock doors, make phone calls. They would do that for Mayor Pete. They're not going to do that for Tim Walz. I think it's meh.
Are you a Democratic voter?
Yes, for many years. And
you're not excited. You're not excited about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Kamala was fine. I think they did themselves a big disservice by picking him as the VP pick.
Will you go to the polls?
The wrong move.
Will you vote for them?
Probably, because again, it'll
Probably
be the lesser of two evils.
Probably, probably
enthusiasm behind someone like Mayor Pete.
I'm a big Pete Buttigieg guy. I'm a big Pete Buttigieg guy, but she had to pick the right person. I think Tim Walz is a great pick.
Yes, Tim Walz isn't it. You guys are going to lose the election, and everyone's going to be.
What do you mean? You're the Democrat. I'm an independent. See this? All right. Unfortunately that's a big downer way to end the show. That right there, when people tell me, when I say things like, well, there are extremes on both sides, and people say, Todd, show me. That's a great example right there. I mean, this far left stuff of it had to be Buttigieg, or I don't know if I might not vote. And then I mean, if people like that stay home and don't vote because they didn't get their way, they deserve the government they're going to get on the other side in Project 2025. Kamala Harris made a great choice because Tim Walz is so Midwestern that he smells of tuna casserole when he walks in the room. It's a great choice. and I commend the vice president on her great choice. A great show as well today. Special thanks to Dan Green from Minnesota who broke this story. Appreciate him making our show the first stop on his tour. And Luke Mathers of Tuesday Tangents. Luke will be in Eau Claire tomorrow at the event with Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz. Join us from Eau Claire tomorrow. Whatever you're fighting for, whatever you believe in, don't give up. Keep banging your drum. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, I think Casper saying like that combined with him saying Kamala's name wrong, I think
that's just ridiculous. I don't know if it was real or not, but that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, not voting because you didn't get the right VP pick, in your opinion. I don't know.
Right.
It's a choice. I just hope it's one he doesn't make. Anyway, goodbye, everybody.
All right. See you guys later. Bye-bye.